All right, I'm Paul Shurtleff. I tie for Semperfly and Moonlit and Nirvana, Jay Stockard, and Dragontail, Tenkara, and a few others. Today I was going to try to do one of these guys right here. This is a CDC Blue Wing Olive. I'm calling it my Comparachute because it's kind of a cross between a Comparadun and a parachute. I'm going to be using a split thread technique in CDC with CDL. And okay, I'll just get started. So what I've put in the vise is a Moonlit fly fishing. It's an ML052.
What size?
This is a 14. I tie them smaller, quite a bit smaller, but for demonstration today, I'm just going to do a 14. So, and the thread I'm using is Semperfly's Nano Silk. It's in 12/0 in brown. Let's see if you can see. There we go. There it is. So I'm just going to start this about right here, and the reason why I'm starting right there is because that's about where I'm going to want to end my body and start my wing. So I'm going to tie in the tail first. I'm going to just bring my thread down right there about where a barb would be if there was a barb on it. And then I'm using CDL for the tail, which is Coq de Leon. I just plucked a few feathers from my capes at home, so. Anyway, this is the Coq de Leon, and this is dark Pardo if you guys are wanting to do it. So I don't need very many feathers or very many fibers, just a few, maybe like half a dozen, 6 or so. And I'm so I've taken this. The feather comes like this, and then what I'm doing is I'm going to straighten out these barbs 90 degrees from the stem, and what that does is it lines up the tips. And then when the tips are aligned, then you can just pull them straight off. So right there. Now for the tail length, I'm going to go the length of the hook, or close to it. They can be a little bit longer and be fine, but not too much longer. So I've come over 3 turns, and then I'm going to bring my nail underneath the back of the hook and kind of splay that a little bit. Then I'm going to come around 1 turn underneath that to lock in that splay. So that way those tail fibers are splayed out nicely. And then I'm going to remove the excess, but I'm going to remove it to the point where I started my thread at. And the reason for that is I want a nice smooth underbody. And then I bring my thread back to where the tail starts. Not right next to it, but pretty close to it. Now for the body, I'm just going to use a single CDC feather, and it's not going to matter. You can tie this in any color that you want to. Adams, gray, bluing olive color. any color you want. This one I'm just going to be using this. What is it? Where is it? There it is. An olive, and just a single feather. So I'm just taking a single CDC feather out of here. And what I'm going to be doing is wrapping the feather around the hook. So I start this right back here with a single turn, and I'm going to go 2 turns and then pull this back to just the tip, about right there. And then I'm going to come over those butt ends and park my thread about right there. Now I'm just going to take my hackle pliers to the end of that and straighten it up. It looks kind of like an unruly mess right now, but that's fine. So that's straight off the hook. I'm not spinning it, I'm not twisting it or anything yet. So, and then I'm going to come out right up top, and I'm going to give it a half twist clockwise, then come around, and then one more clockwise turn, and then a clockwise turn, and then a clockwise turn. And I'm turning this as I'm working my way up. And what's happening is the stem is smaller in diameter up front than it is towards the back. And so by doing this, I'm putting a natural taper in the body. And I'm just going to work my way up to where my thread is. All right, right there, and then I'm just going to tie it off. So 1 turn to hold it, 1 turn behind, 2 turns behind, a couple turns in front, and that's it. I'm going to come in with my scissors and trim the top. Now, it looks like a mess right here, but I'm going to come through and trim these fibers down. All right, so there we go. There we have our body. Now I'm going to come back just a little bit, and I'm in position for the wing. Now for the wing, what I'm going to use is Semperfli's poly yarn. You can use whatever color you want to. In fact, you can use CDC if you want to. You could use brightly colored CDC for a cider. But to maintain the wing, I'm gonna use this gray color. Because bluing olives have kind of a grayish, kind of a grayish colored wing. So straight from the hank, I'm just gonna take a piece about 2 inches long, but I don't want to use this whole piece. So what I'm gonna do is take out about roughly a quarter of what's here. So, and I'm going to measure that up, and that's a little bit thicker than I want still. I want to go more sparse than thick for this part, because what essentially I'm going to be doing is doubling the wing over. So whatever you have here is going to be doubled over for the finished wing. That's about right there. So you can see about how much I have right there, and it's not very much. It's pretty wispy. And so what I'm going to do is a tie-in technique, and how I do that is I'm actually going to put this over the thread like this and just hold it there with my fingers, and then come over the top and grab both wings. So I've got the wing like this, and then I can position it just about anywhere I want to on the hook. So that's one turn, two turns, and I'm putting a little bit of pressure down right there on the bottom, and then I'm going to come in front and behind, and then in front and then behind the wing again. And then I'm going to come up and make two turns around the base to post it. But I don't want to come up and post it like a parachute. And then one turn in front just to hold it. And there's my wing. If you were going to tie a parachute and use a hackle, you just continue up the post here and post it, and then tie in your hackle, and then wrap your hackle. So for what I wanted to demonstrate for you guys today is what's called a composite loop, and I'm going to be using two different colors of CDC in a single loop. I don't know if you guys have much experience with loops, but so how I'm going to be doing it is with the Petit magic tool and the clip. So, and what I'm going to be using is a slate gray, because mayflies typically have a slightly darker thorax than they do an abdomen, if you look at them. So what I'm going to be using is a dark gray or a slate gray CDC. And a single feather from this color. And then I'm just going to set it on top of the clip. And then choose a different color, which we'll go with this dark green, dark olive. And once again, I'm going to stand these fibers up 90 degrees from the stem, and then lay that directly on top of the first CDC feather. So I've got both feathers like this, like that. Now I'm going to come through and press it into the clip, into the table clip, and you hold the back of the stems, and then just straight down into the clip like this. So the table clip's like this. Now I'm going to come back and remove the back piece, and then with this clip I'm going to come through and I'm going to collect all those fibers. So essentially what I did is folded both feathers on top of each other. And then I'm going to come through with my other scissors and just make a straight cut to get rid of the stems. So basically, so I have this. Now to do the split thread, what I'm going to do is expose a section of the thread, and then I'm going to give it a counterclockwise spin while I'm taking my finger and I'm going to kind of go along with my nail and flatten the thread. And I'm doing this so that I can split it with my bodkin. So I've got the thread split, and then I'm just keeping my finger in there until I can get the clip in. Then I'm just going to allow that, or put that up into the clip. And I'm going to get those pretty close to the, I don't know if you can see that, but that's pretty close to the end. And then I'm going to pinch the thread and then give my bobbin a clockwise spin. So I went counterclockwise to flatten it out, and now we're going to cord it back up with a clockwise spin. And then I'm just going to kind of release that in controlled spin to allow it to, essentially what I've done is created a hackle out of 2 CDC feathers. And now that I've got it corded up, I'm going to take my thread again, and I'm going to bring some more thread out of my bobbin and then come back down here to my bobbin. And with my nail and finger, I'm going to bring those twists up to the end, and then I'm pinching the thread back here at the base of the CDC, and then I'm going to bring my bobbin back up to working distance and put a 90-degree turn in the bobbin, and that'll keep it from unwinding. And now I'm just going to come through, and I'm going to come through. I'm going to go behind a couple times, behind the wing, in front of the wing a couple times, back behind the wing, and then I'm going to pull up on these fibers and come in front of the wing, in front of the wing, and in front of the wing until I'm all out. And then I'm going to create a small head right at the eye of the hook. And then I'm going to allow my thread to untwist a little bit, so I put a little bit of a counterclockwise turn in it. And that's just so that it won't want to twist up on me. So now we're essentially done. I'm going to whip finish. I don't use a whip finisher. I always do it by hand. So I'm going to put in 3 or 4 turns. And then I'll do 2 whip finishes. Okay. And then remove my thread. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the vise a little bit, and I'm just going to kind of hold the wing and pull some of those fibers that I may have trapped down. Because what I'm trying to do with this CDC is create the illusion of legs. Like this, and some of those fibers are a little long, so you can cut them if you want, or just pinch them.
It's making me hungry.
Yeah. So there we go, and then I'm going to rotate my vise again, and then I'm going to come straight under, and any fiber that's been trapped underneath, I'm just going to clip it flat, straight flat underneath. Now to trim the wing, I kind of eyeball this, but I'm going to come up, and with a rotation, I'm going to come up and then clip down in one swoop. Like that. And then I'm just going to come through and kind of clean this up a little bit. Make the wing look more like a mayfly wing. This is probably not necessary. The fish probably aren't going to care, but I care. There we go. I'm just going to come through and kind of clean up some of those wild and crazy CDC fibers. All right, there it is.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
You use shake on that, right?
What's that?
For dry fly, you're using shake on
Oh yeah, dry shake. I've got, I think it's loon. I'm not really sure what it is, but it is a dry shake.
Just
So,
put the whole fly in the shake?
yep, put the whole fly in there and just shake the crap out of it. And
How durable is CDC against the fish teeth?
well, about as durable as any dry fly, really. I mean, any delicate dry fly, you're not going to get very many fish. They're good for about 4 or 5 at least, and before they're trashed.
Right.
Well, it depends, and it depends on the hook too. If it's barbless, it usually comes out a lot nicer. You don't have to get your forceps on it. So I'm gonna do the same fly, same hook, but different colors.
Perfect. It's gonna be the same fly.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna do the same fly and the same hook, and I'm gonna do in different colors this time, so you guys can see some of the variants that you can make with it. So for the tail, once again, I'm going to use the Coq de Leon. And for the fiber amount, probably 6 to 8 strands is all. That many.
It's okay to say that.
I'll do this one in Adam's color. So I'm going to use some light done CDC for the body. So I'm giving that half a clockwise turn every wrap. Now I'll come through and clean up the body. Okay, now for the post, I'm going to use the poly yarn once again. But I don't want to use the whole amount. Probably about a quarter. All right. Now for the body, I'm going to use this cinnamon. And a dark dun color.
CDC cinnamon and
Dark dun. So this color, cinnamon. Atoms have, they've got the gray body, and then the grizzly and brown hackle typically. But instead of hackle, we're using the CDC. So that's the dark dun. And then both of them together. So I'm holding these by the back of the stem. And then to put them in the table clip, they go the thick end of the stem first. So I've got it in the clip like this. And then I'm going to remove the end pieces. Like this. And then I'm going to come up and clip those fibers together, and then release the bottom clip. So I've got everything lined up. And then I'm going to remove the stems. Now I'm just going to set that aside, and what I'm going to do is flatten out my thread, and I do that by giving it a counterclockwise turn, and then I'm just going to come through with my nail and finger and and make sure that thread's flat so I can split it. So I've got the thread split. And now I'm just going to introduce those feathers into the thread. And you can see I put the clip in past where the thread ends. And then I'm just going to pull the clip out until I get to where I want to release it. And then I'm just going to release. So I've got everything in there, and I'm pinching the thread so it doesn't untwist or fall out on me. And then I'm going to cord up the thread again by giving it a clockwise turn. And then release it. And then I'm going to pinch the thread again and bring some more slack, and then I'm going to cord it just a little bit more, and then release. And then I'm going to pinch down here at the end of my bobbin and bring everything up. And I'm pinching the thread right there at the base of the CDC. And then I'm going to bring my bobbin up to my fingers and then give my bobbin a 90-degree turn. And I'm maintaining tension on that. And what that did was I released the thread turns from this side of the bobbin, but I maintained the thread turns and tension up here. So now I'm just going to wrap until my CDC starts where I want it to. And I'm going to come a couple of turns behind, and then a couple turns in front, one more behind, one more in front, and then wrap up to the hook eye. And then I'm going to bring those fibers back to expose the hook eye. And then whip finish. I usually do too.
So you can use this same pattern for PMDs for anything?
Yeah, basically whatever color, whatever you're trying to imitate. So now what I do is I hold the post straight up, and then I'm going to come down with my thumb and finger and kind of pinch all those fibers flat. I'm going to pinch and pull to the side. So what I'm trying to do is create a nice flat profile, almost like a parachute. And I'm holding, and like I said, I'm holding the wing just so I don't, I'm not pulling those fibers down along with the CDC. And then I'm going to kind of turn it so I'm looking straight down on it. And any really long fibers, I'm just going to pinch those off. Or you can get out your scissors and cut them off too if you want. But I like the look of pinched fibers instead of cut. And now I'm going to take my scissors and go underneath and clip everything completely flat on the bottom. Now I clip the wing as the very last step, and I kind of come up at a sharp angle and then curved back, just like a real mayfly wing. All right. Adam's Comparachute. Alrighty, what I want to do for you guys now is soft hackle, just a standard soft hackle. But I'm going to be doing tying it in a composite loop, or using a composite loop when I'm tying it. And just for some added weight to it, I'm going to be using a bead. This is a Moonlit ML051 in a size 12, and I'm using a 2.7 millimeter tungsten bead. So these are them. Equivalents for the 51 would be like TMC 2487 and or a Daiichi 1130. So the easiest way I've found to load a bead is to I grabbed a hook with a pair of flat nose pliers, and then hold the bead, and then you want to go small hole first, like this, to load it. Yeah. And I'm positioning the hook a little bit in a downward position. So I'm just going to start this. I'm not going to add any additional weight, just the bead alone would be fine. So I'm just going to start my thread kind of behind the bead and move up to about that position right there. And for the thread, I'm using the same. It's 12-aught nano silk in brown, but color's not really that important. So whatever color you want. And for the dubbing, I'm going to be using just a hare's mask. I'm also going to be using some ice dubbing with this too. For the composite loop, it'll be a hare's mask, ice dubbing, and soft hackle. This is a Whiting's Brahma hen. It's real similar to grizzly or to partridge. So partridge would be the equivalent. You could use partridge if you wanted to as well. That's the whole reason why I bought this particular one, is because I wanted the partridge colors with a longer fibered, longer stemmed feather. So that's why I bought this. So right now, what I'm going to be doing is is the fur on the mask is important to get the colors you want. So you're going to have darker colors up here on the ears and lighter colors down here on the cheeks of the mask. And it's important to know that when you're trying to get different colors. There's about, I don't know, 5 or 6 different colors on this one mask that you can get out of it. So what I'm going to do, and this is just a scraper, the dubbing scraper, and I'm using this to get some of the dubbing out. So I want some of the darker stuff from the ears. So I'm just scraping some of that fur and underfur out on the ears. And then I'm going to take some of that dubbing and do what's called carding or preening. And I'm going to take that fluff and I'm just going to pull it apart and then stack it up on top of each other like this. And what I'm doing is lining up those fibers so that they're all crossways instead of all jumbled. And then I'm just going to set that on my on the table clip of the Pedagine tool. Now what I'm going to do is take a little bit of ice dubbing. Just a little bit goes a long way, and this one happens to be like a peacock color. And it doesn't take very much, just a couple of, just a few strands of the ice dubbing. Not all ice dubbing is the same, so some of it, this stuff from Semperfli is longer strands, so what I'm doing is just taking a few strands and then I'm going to pinch them and break them into smaller pieces. Hairline's ice dubbing or standard ice dubbing that you buy in the packages, it's not as long of stranded as this stuff is. So you probably don't have to do this if you're using a standard ice dub from Hairline. So I'm going to take that ice dubbing and put it on right up on top of the hare's mask dubbing, and I'm going to blend them. So what I've got is hare's ice, hare's ear and ice dubbing. So, and you can see it's not very much, it's pretty subtle. And then I'm just going to put that back on my table clip. Now for the feather I'm going to use this Brahma hen, and I'm going to choose a feather that has, I don't know, not too long of fibers, but not too short either. So about like this. And then like with any of the soft hackles, you want to get rid of the fluff and and I'm just going to take this piece right here like this, and then I'm going to hold the tip and then stand these fibers up 90 degrees from the stem. Like this. And then what I'm going to do is, because this is too many fibers for the soft hackle, I want it to be pretty sparse. So what I'm going to do is, holding the tip, I'm just going to strip that top side off. So I've got this. And then I'm going to introduce that onto the hare's ear and ice dubbing in the table clip. So I've got this. And then, like with the CDC, I remove both ends on the table clip and make it flat. And then come over the top with the clip and just get everything together like this. So what I've got is soft hackle, a hare's ear, and ice dub all in one clip. And then I'm going to remove the stem of the soft hackle. But before I do, what I'm going to do is these Magic Tool clips are transparent, and they are transparent so that you can measure hackle length. So by doing this, I'm going to trim this fiber not directly next to the stem, but I'm actually going to cut it at an angle because I want those fibers to go exactly to the length I want it when I'm actually going to use it. So you can see I've taken that out, and you can see that right there. So that's the length. So that's the length of hackle I want for this size of hook. And I'm just going to set that to the side.
So is the hackle length the gap width, or?
Yeah, I'm looking. I don't want to go too much further past the gap of the hook. I want it to be about the gap, or maybe the length of what the body is going to be. If it's too big, I mean, you'll get a lot of movement, but I think that kind of hinders. Maybe I don't know if the fish are going to care. I really don't. It's just a personal preference, I guess. So from here, I've got my hook kind of angled down in the vise, and I did that on purpose so I can still reach the end. So, but my thread wraps are about the middle of the shank, and what I'm going to do now is prepare the thread for a dubbing loop. So once again, and I'm going to do a counterclockwise turn to flatten the thread. And then I'm going to split the thread. So I got that thread split and ready to go. And then I'm going to introduce this, my composite loop into the split thread. But I'm not going to put it up close. Because I'm going to do a new technique that I'm kind of working on. I'm calling it a compound loop. Because what I've got here is a composite loop, and then I'm going to compound that by adding more dubbing in an actual loop. So I'm going to close this up by a clockwise turn to seed in my composite loop. Okay, now I've got that, I'm pinching my thread, and now I'm going to do what's called touch dubbing. You guys familiar with touch dub? So now what I'm going to do, I've got my composite loop down here, and now I'm going to touch dub up in front by putting a little bit of wax on the thread up front. And now I'm going to take some more of this hare's ear, but I'm going to take it from the cheeks because I want a different color for the abdomen than I do the thorax area. And I'm just going to take a little bit of that hare's ear, and I'm going to touch dub up in front. Real sparse. And now what I'm going to do is take my dubbing loop tool. This happens to be a Stonefo dubbing spinner, but you can use just a standard hook tool. And then I'm going to make a dubbing loop. And then bring my thread all the way to the front. And now what I'm going to do is spin up those. So what I've got now is what I'm calling a compound loop. So what I've done is I've made a composite loop down here, and I've made a standard dubbing loop here, which is compounded into one loop. And now I'm going to tie the fly basically with this loop. So and that's why I've stopped my thread down here and I didn't touch dub all the way up, is so that now I can bring my thread down to where I want it to start on the hook. So that's about right where I want it to start. And then I'm just going to do touching wraps. Forming the abdomen. Okay, now I've got about a bead's width left from the bead, and that's where I want my compound loop to start, or my composite loop to start. I'm just going to bring these materials back, kind of fold these back, and then continue on doing the collar of the soft hackle. Right up to the bead. And then I'm just going to tie that off. A couple turns in front, a couple turns in back. This nano silk is pretty slick stuff, so got to make sure things are tied down really well. And just going to remove that loop. And now I kind of misjudged this a little bit, so I have a little bit of a space left up front. So all I'm going to do is take some more of this hare's mask and just fill in right behind the bead. Just dub it on by hand. You don't want very much though, just a small noodle, just to fill that slight gap. Right behind the bead, and then I'm just going to whip finish right here, right behind the bead. I do a couple of them. All right. That's it.
What are we looking for?
So it's a buggy super buggy. It's basically just a beaded beaded hare's ear soft hackle. But how I've done it is the tricky part, is this special part.
Did you fish that as a tooth fly?
Yeah, I mean, you fish it as just any standard nymph, or because it has the bead, it'll sink pretty quick, so faster than a standard soft hackle with the bead on it. You can do it without a bead. In fact, I've got several versions of this where I've reversed the hackle to face forward as a tenkara fly, so using this same technique in a compound loop. So I'm going to do, we'll stray away from the Pédagon and the magic tool clip and the compound loops and stuff.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll do, this is my Straggle string Czech Nymph. And so for a hook, I'm going to use it's a partridge Czech Nymph.
What size is that? 12?
This is a 12, but partridge, for some reason, they kind of revamped their sizing. So I have another package, and this is a size 4, and it says formerly size 10. So I don't know why such a dramatic size difference, but
Is that going to be similar, or could you use like a Moonlight 051?
yeah, you could use a 51. You could use a 51. The reason why I'm not using a 51 is because I like the bend, the less dramatic of a bend of the partridge hook versus
Okay.
You would use a
Moonlight.
51 over a cling camera.
For a cling camera, I'd use a 57 actually. And so this is called the Straggle string Czech Nymph. So I'm using a Straggle string. And this is a leaf green. It's a brand new color, and or you could use the ryak, the green ryak, any kind of fluorescent or high green. And then you'll want to use a darker color green for the thorax area. And then for a hot spot, I'm going to add some of this pink, the fluorescent pink, for a hot spot. And then for the shell back, I'm going to use this Semperfli thin skin shell back. Okay, so what you want to do is lead the hook. So I'm going to start at the back and just make some touching turns. To about that point right there, and then I'm going to double back on itself and come back over itself. To about that point, and that'll be it. Now for the thread, I'm just going to use this same 12-aught nano silk in brown, and I'm just going to start that right there at the thread wraps, and then I'm going to use the tag end to kind of guide things and come over the lead to pretty far down in the bend.
You say that's the 12-aught panel that you're using?
This is 12-aught, yeah. 18's my favorite, but for doing some of the other techniques, the 12-aught's a little easier to do the split thread. Plus, the 12-aught thread is still, it's 50 denier, so it's still smaller than UTC 70 in diameter.
You can get that 18 to split all right?
Yeah, you can. It just the 12 is a little more manageable, a little easier to manage. So
I was using 18 earlier, I could get split.
yeah.
That's not the least favorite size.
Yeah, have 18 on. Is that more similar in size to like the spider thread that they do?
There you go.
18 odd is 30 denier. So anyway, I'm going to tie in the shell back. And kind of stretch it as I'm bringing it down. Perfect. Thank you.
You're gonna have to loan me some clear shell packs.
Okay.
You have your scissors so I cut this right.
Okay, now I'm going to tie in the ribbing material.
These are the lead cutters and wire.
You could use wire if you wanted to, but I like the clear.
See, gold handle, silver handle. Matching person.
And then you want to tie in your straggle string. And really this is color preference, is personal preference. But I'm using this, it's a brand new color called leaf green. I'm not even sure if it's on the market yet. But the next best color would be like the ryak green or a fluorescent green. But what I'm going to do is pull off some of the fibers at the bottom to expose the core, so I can have a nice clean tie-in spot. There we go. I'm going to bring my thread right at the spot where I want to bring, which is about right here. And I'm bringing my thread to that spot, and I'm going to do a half hitch to keep my thread from jumping, because that's the point where I want to add in my hot spot. So now I'm just going to start wrapping the straggle string. And I'm going to do what's a technique that's called an anchor wrap. Now, anchor wrap's pretty important to do with these types of materials, because an anchor wrap seats the material down as tight as possible to the hook. And so you're not going to have any loose wraps, because sometimes when this stuff gets wet, it'll loosen up. And if it loosens up too much, you're going to get loops, and all it takes is one fish's tooth to get into one of those loops and destroy your fly. So I'm going to come in with 1 and 2 turns, and I'm going to kind of pull some of those fibers back as much as possible. That's my second turn, and I'm going to support the hook with my thumb and then give the material a little bit of a pull. Did you see it move? And then maintain tension, and then that's what's called an anchor wrap. And I'm going to continue to pull these fibers back as I'm turning, so that I'm getting each turn right next to each other. And every other turn, I'm going to do an anchor wrap. And that's just security to ensure that those wraps are as tight as possible against the hook, so that when that material gets wet, it's not going to come loose, or you're not going to have any loops or anything in it. I'm just going to continue up. I said every other turn, or every 2 or 3 turns, I'm going to do the anchor wrap.
Would you ever consider consider using any kind of adhesive instead, or no?
You could use an adhesive, but you would have to, if you're going to use an adhesive like super glue with doing this, you would have to be pretty quick at it because the super glue will dry before you get to it. Yeah, and then yeah, if you've got super glue on here, you'll have to be careful when you're printing these fibers back because you'll glue your fingers together with the material. Yeah, yeah. But it's kind of important to be doing these types of anchor wraps on these kinds of materials because, like I said, it's security to ensure that these materials are as tight as they can possibly be on the hook. But you don't want to do what I just did, and that is pull tight enough to break the material. Back that off. Luckily it broke where I have enough to finish. Okay. Now I'm going to stand the hook up just a little bit. And then I'm going to tie in the hot spot for the hot spot. And once again, this is just straggle string, fluorescent pink. But you could use orange or any other of the fluorescent colors. But I only want a couple of turns because the idea is just a hot spot, just to get the attention. That's plenty. Okay, and now for the third color of straggle string. Okay. Okay, so now before I go much further, I'm just going to kind of clean up those butt ends a little bit, and then I'm going to put a 1/2 inch in it. And that's just to keep my thread from bumping off and losing the work I've done so far. Now what I'm going to do is, because these typically have tapered bodies, what I'm going to kind of do is come down on top with my fingers and push as many of those fibers, splitting them on either side of the hook. And yeah, like I'm prepping this for the shell back to come over, and then I'm going to kind of clip the top and a little bit of the sides. Up here in the thorax area, I'm not worried about doing that because I want those to be my legs. So now what I'm going to do is bring the shell back over, and I'm giving it a slight stretch. I'm not stretching it too far or too tight. But I'm putting a little bit of tension on that. And then a couple of turns to hold it, and then I'm pulling it back, and then a couple more turns. And then I'm going to put another half hitch or whip finish in there, because I don't want my thread to jump off the eye. And then I'm going to give this the shell back material, and you could use scud back too, and then give it a stretch and then a snip, and those butt ends seat right down. Now I'm going to try to position that shell back material directly on top of the hook, and then take the ribbing material and start ribbing the fly. And I'm gonna space this out, and I'm kind of holding that material so that the shell back materials, because I don't want the shell back to rotate. Just do some nice even segments. And try not to trap any of the straggle string fibers on the bottom, on top of your shell back. I'm just ribbing this up. I'm trying to keep the segments as even as possible. Just wrap right through the thorax area. All the way to the eye, and then tie off. A few turns behind, a couple in front. Because this is mono, you have to make sure you get I double it back and then over the top of it a couple turns, and then whip finish it off. And I'll do 2 whip finishes. And then remove the thread and the rib. Okay, now what I do is kind of come through with my bodkin, and any of the fibers in the thorax area that I may have trapped down, I want to pick those out, because I want there to be the straggle string fibers. I want those to come out for the legs in the thorax area. Now, because these hydrocyc, or the free-living net spinner caddis, they do have some gills, but they're really small. So I'm going to come through with my scissors and just kind of trim in the abdomen area. I'm going to trim those fibers down. Okay, now what I like to do is add some color, and for color I'm going to be using these chart pack markers, and the color I have here is an olive, and then I have a pale olive. I'm going to start with the pale olive, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to color over the entire back. On all sides of the back with the pale olive first. And then I'm going to come over the top of that with the darker olive, or just a straight olive. The color number is 139. And then I'm going to come over just the thorax area with this the darker color. And then to darken it up even more, I'm going to use a Delta Brown. And again, just on the thorax area. And then I'm going to come underneath and hit the thorax area a little bit with the Delta Brown. And that just darkens up those straggle string fibers to make them look more like legs. But careful not to go over your hot spot though, just just touch the underside with the Delta Brown. You could use black too if you wanted, but and then to cover up that head area, I'm going to be using a UV clear fly finish, and I'm just going to put a little bit, and then to cure it I have a UV laser. So I'm just going to put a little bit just on the top to kind of seal those that darker color in. And I'm only putting this on the thorax area. I'll put a little bit of coat, another coat up over the top of this. Kind of spreading it around because I want to cover that entire shell back area. All right, that's it.
That's a great